The year 2021 brought us the return of cinema and it gave us one hell of a stacked list. We are now in 2022, but I am finally getting round to my best films of the year 2021. And we're doing it as a top 15 because there were so many great films that came out last year. The criteria is that if I had access to watch it in the UK in the year 2021, then that is where it qualifies. So there might be some 2020 movies in this that weren't available in the UK in 2020. And there might be a couple of movies that are out this year that I got access to thanks to London Film Festival. But without further ado, let's start with some honourable mentions as there is quite a list to get through. The Kingsman, Spencer, Encounter, Les Olympiades, Love and Monsters, One Night in Miami, Schumacher, Into the Labyrinth, A Quiet Place Part 2, Supernova, Judas and the Black Messiah, In the Heights, The Last Duel, Phantom of the Open, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. These are all films that I really enjoyed, and I would implore that you do check them out. Without further ado, let's get into the top 15 movies for me in 2021.
It's gonna be a beautiful wedding.
Palm Springs is a movie that was an Amazon original starring Andy Samberg and gave us a unique take on the Groundhog Day genre, as it were. And this film was hilarious, but it was also very heartfelt. It is actually crazy how much heart there was in this movie. It had no right to be as heartful as what it was. The performances in this were absolutely fantastic, and I do really enjoy the love story featured within this. The way it just stuck with me for weeks after seeing it made it easily ride high on the list, and it managed to just about hold out into that top 15 spot. Tick Tick Boom. Now, this movie is a film that I felt like I was looking into a mirror. I have not known much about the guy who made Rent or his old story, but this whole arc of a creative struggling for years just to get a bit of acknowledgement. And even though he's been told he is good, he is still not quite getting there. There is just a lot of layers for any creative to see themselves in this movie. Andrew Garfield is absolutely fantastic. There are a lot of strong performances in this, but this man is a future Oscar winner without a shadow of a doubt. It's just a question of when rather than if.
When you're alone and life is making you
Last
lonely.
Night in Soho was Edgar Wright's new movie, and while a lot of people were disappointed with it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Some of the set pieces in this movie are absolutely incredible. The dancing, in particular, has always stuck with me. Thomasin McKenzie is brilliant. If people are still sleeping on her as an actor, I genuinely don't know what else she can do. She was fantastic in Jojo Rabbit. I was excited to see her in this one, and she very much was the heart and soul of this movie and did a great demonstration into a descent into madness. There are some solid performances all around, and while the third act doesn't work for everyone, it worked for me somewhat, apart from a little bit of a plot hole at the very end. But I'm watching a movie. If I want realism, I would just go outside.
David, look! They're wheels!
Minari is a tale of the American dream told through the eyes of an Asian family that have emigrated to the United States. And there is so much heart within this movie. It is partially in English, partially in a different language, and it works really well. I especially love the dynamic between the grandma and the son. They have a fantastic little dynamic, and Stephen Yun, he is great. He's not been seen much since The Walking Dead, but he came out of the blocks flying with this one and truly showed his acting chops. It's a very intimate, personal story, and it works really well, and therefore it did fly into the top end of my end of year list.
planet Arrakis is so beautiful when the sun is low.
I know, June. It's only number 11 on my list. Now, this movie is nothing short of outstanding. Easily one of the best films to come out in a very long time. And yes, I did also have the Lord of the Rings feeling at the end, where it was just leading into another chapter. I can't wait for part two. Hans Zimmer's score is absolutely fantastic. And Rebecca Ferguson is by far the person that carries it for me. And like I said in my review for it, there wasn't a moment where I thought, wow, I love cinema. So it didn't quite get to the top end of the list for me. But it is a very solid film, and I thoroughly enjoy it and expect to take a lot of the technical awards come Oscar season. But as of right now, for me, it sits at number 11 on my list.
Date of birth?
Friday, 31st of December, 1937.
The Father is a horror movie without being a horror movie. Anthony Hopkins won the Best Acting Oscar for it, and in hindsight, I would say he was the best choice. While Chadwick's last performance was fantastic, Anthony Hopkins' performance was both terrifying and heartbreaking. This whole idea of seeing Alzheimer's through the actual sufferer's eyes was an interesting take. And whilst I don't know what it's like to have Alzheimer's, I imagine that this film got as close as you possibly could to replicating that feeling of confusion and just disbelief at what's happening around you. Anthony Hopkins is a fantastic performance. Olivia Colman is also really good. It's a great little movie, and if you have not watched it, I would definitely implore you to go watch it.
Now everybody knows.
But this isn't about me. This is hurting a lot of people.
Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, if Endgame was the movie that rewarded you for following Marvel for the last 10 years, then Spider-Man No Way Home very much rewarded you for following the Spider-Man movies for the last 2 decades. It's easily the best of the Marvel Spider-Man movies, and I would say overall it's my second favorite Spider-Man movie. I think Spider-Verse still pips it for me, but to be in the audience experiencing this with everyone else, I've seen it a couple of times in cinema since my first watch, and just waiting for them reactions as certain moments were about to happen. It was an experience I would love to repeat again and again and again, just because there's something so satisfying. You could genuinely feel the experience with people. As a movie, there are a couple of bits that don't really work. There's a couple of small cameos that just kind of feel thrown in there for the fanfare. And I will say it's not as a powerful film unless you've watched every other Spider-Man film ever made, which is another downside for it.
Breaking news right now out of Thailand.
Rescue teams are working through the night to save 12 boys and their coach trapped inside a cave.
The Rescue is a movie that I cried multiple times throughout. I remember living through this. It only happened a couple of years ago, so I very much remember following this and watching the World Cup. But as I'm watching the World Cup, there was also these stories of these kids trapped in a cave and surrounded for a very long time. I remember feeling bad for the coach, how guilty he must have felt just dragging these kids into this cave, which was normal, and it just happened to backfire on them big time. It is a great story, and it just really shows that humanity can coexist and come together for the big causes. And it's not a documentary I'm going to forget anytime soon. I would be very shocked if it doesn't win all the best documentary awards, though there are a few documentaries that I have not watched, so take that comment with a little bit of salt.
Let's catch you up. My name is Raya. Our lands have been at war for as long as we can remember.
Raya and the Last Dragon was Disney's first offering of the year for me, and it was by far my favorite one. I love movies that give me a world I can sink my teeth into. As someone that likes TTRPGs and just RPG video games in general, it was nice to get this whole world and all these characters representing these different nations. It's very simple and not too complex, but it's absolutely brilliant. And when you think about the fact that the actors had to record their voices basically in closets, because this was mostly recorded during the peak of the pandemic, you just have to admire what an achievement this movie was. Sisu is a great looking dragon. These steps in animation are amazing. Yeah, Raya and the Last Dragon on Disney Plus. Do check it out. It is well worth your time as just a Disney movie. The Suicide Squad. I was so excited for this one. James Gunn needed that redemption after that BS sacking that happened to him many years ago. And he gave us a Suicide Squad that actually felt like a Suicide Squad movie. He took a couple of characters I couldn't care less for in the 2016 original and made them some of the most well developed characters. All the characters that got the spotlight in the trailers really undersold how important some other characters would be. Ratcatcher 2, you saw him in the trailer. You didn't realize how much of an impact she would have on the movie, and she was by far my favorite of the lot. I love the layers of grey in these characters. They're not all outright villains, they're all very much layer of grey characters. I could have done without the Harley Quinn rom com sequence, as it just felt like more filler to give Harley more screen time. But other than that, this was a fantastic action movie, and it's nice to see a studio just give a director free reign to do what they want. Sure, some bits should have been toned back, but for the most part, this worked as a Suicide Squad movie and definitely goes up there with Assault on Arkham in terms of the level of Suicide Squad movies.
iPhone? Activik.
Oh, yes, this is the movie that took the world by storm, or at least Europe by storm. Another Round is a movie that you go into it expecting a lot because of all the hype around it. And for the first maybe hour, it's good, but it's not great. But there's a certain point where it suddenly gets really good. Like, really, really good. And the bittersweet ending is going to stick with me for a very long time. The song What a Life has been on my Spotify playlist on repeat constantly throughout the last year. Mads Mikkelsen is brilliant in this, and the end scene is absolutely iconic. I love how the film doesn't demonize drinking, but isn't promoting it either. It gives us a bit of both, and I wish more films would do that. Give a little bit of both and make your own interpretations from it. And the story behind this movie as well, about the director's daughter and how she died, and they had to change certain themes in the movie based around that. It's really good, and what a life, what a movie.
Throughout my life, the 10 rings gave our family power.
And here we are, my favorite Marvel movie of the year, which is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie was a big surprise. Out of the four Marvel properties, you had Black Widow finally getting her own standalone movie, Eternals, which was heavily backed by Chloe Zhao, and you had Spider-Man, which everyone was building up as the live action Into the Spider-Verse movie. So when Shang-Chi came out, you couldn't help but think it was just going to be the forgotten child chucked out into the wilderness. So the fact it ended up being one of the best Marvel films ever, I would argue it is their best standalone origin story. I really enjoyed it. The villain is very relatable. I love the dynamic between Sean and Katie, who are brilliant together. I love how they acknowledge the Mandarin thing and play it for jokes with Ben Kingsley, which I again really appreciate. Even though I've never seen Iron Man 3, I have seen enough of the backlash around that. I love the homages to Eastern cinema. The bus scene, for one, is probably one of the best action sequences I've seen all year. And that end fight, while CG is not the best, seeing that dragon appear in IMAX was one of those I love cinema moments. I was just enjoying myself. Got to the end and I realized I hadn't breathed for about half an hour. I was holding my breath the whole way through. I can't wait to see where it goes. I also like how it stands on its own 2 feet. If you've watched some Marvel films, you get them Easter egg rewards like Wong in the Cage, but for the most part, You could watch Shang-Chi without watching any other Marvel movie, and it would still work exactly the same. So I have to really appreciate that.
Is that a burnt orange 1993 station wagon? Or is it... Who are these unstoppable warriors?
Going in at number 3, and this was my number 1 for the longest time, is The Mitchells vs. the Machines. It's weird to think it started out with an average trailer for a film called Connected. Then they changed it to The Mitchells vs. the Machines, and it came to Netflix. And I went into it not expecting much, and I ended up absolutely adoring it. Like, this film is on the exact same level as Into the Spider-Verse, where I didn't go into it expecting much, and I came out just loving it. As much as Disney has put some great movies out this year, like Raya that I've already mentioned, and Encanto, there's just something about this movie that just feels so intimate. And maybe it doesn't help that I went to study film in university and I had a dad that didn't quite understand that stuff. And I had a brother who was always obsessed with dinosaurs when we were younger. So I was seeing a lot of parallels between my family and the family in this. And I really enjoyed the dog as well. Olivia Colman is a great villain in this as that phone. Some of the stuff she comes out with is absolutely hilarious. And I do love the underhanded nature in which, well, Katie is, I think, the first main LGBTQ plus animated character that is at least outwardly there. There have been others in the past, I'm not sure, but the fact that it's like part of a character but not a whole character, and she's just this lovable film loving dork that all us film fans can relate to, really worked. And I loved the family dynamic. Honestly, this film brought tears to my eyes, and I genuinely thought I was going to be my number 1 for the year. But there are a couple more that just about pipped it.
My husband took the boat out on the lake. He took a handgun that I didn't even know that we owned, and
The Night House. This was number 1 until this month. This is a psychological horror slash thriller movie that, when I was thinking of how do I rate this? What do I rate this movie? And I was thinking, and I couldn't think of anything wrong with this movie. The lead performance in this is absolutely outstanding. And it's very rare in this day and age that something will happen in a movie that makes me do the old oh shit reaction. But when that voice says, I'm not Owen, oh, my jaw hit the floor. It is very well paced. It can be interpreted in a couple of different ways, like grief or a whole more down to earth scenario. I like to think it's a bit of column A and a bit of column B. But man, this is a horror movie that just ticked all the boxes for me. It didn't rely on jump scares. It relied very much on mystery, tension, and just that fear of the unknown. And all the creepy bits were just left to play out in silence. The amount of times she would see a shadow just in the air, and there's no loud noise to build it up. It's just there, and it's all played out through that lead character's reaction. So good. The Night House is probably my favorite horror movie since Doctor Sleep, and yeah, it was my number 1 until about 2-3 weeks ago, and then this came out.
To visit planet Earth, you will have to be born as a human child.
Yep, this is my number 1. Come on, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Woody Norman. Woody Norman in this is a star of the future. I feel like after the last 12 months and all the strong kid performances we've seen, I feel like the trope of kid actor equals bad actor is well and truly dead, because there are a lot of young actors I've seen in the last year that are doing outstanding work. The bond him and Joaquin Phoenix's character is unpalpable, and the way the movie plays with sound, I'd say is probably the best use of sound I have seen in a movie. Joaquin Phoenix's character's main job is to record interviews with these young kids, asking them about the future. And I am still curious if these interviews were staged or they did actually interview real people saying it was for a documentary and then put it into a drama. I would love it if that was the case, but it probably isn't. But the way he would give the kid his sound equipment and he would be pointing at random things, so all the dialogue behind him is quite muted. Only when he points the mic towards the conversation do you hear it more clearly. It's like they literally said to Willie Norman, "Hey, you're going to be our sound recorder for a few of these scenes in this movie." It is a really well done piece of cinema, and while my cinema wasn't packed, there was about 15 people in there. And usually, when the film ends, you hear the rustling, you hear a bit of chit chat. But no, throughout the credits, just silence. And after the credits finished, I think I was the first one to move, and I'd sat there for a good 2 minutes. It was just dead silent in the screen afterwards. This film left such an effect on me and everyone else I watched it with. It's a fantastic movie, and I'm quite sad that it's not getting a whole lot of attention for the awards season. So I definitely recommend if you can check it out. Come on is a movie that you do need to watch, and it is my number one movie of the year. So there we have it. The year 2021 is well and truly behind us. Time to look forward to 2022. Good news. While I did think about quitting overall, I took a month off full-time reviews, and then December had to have a stacked run of films come out, and I realized I love to talk about movies too much, so I will be continuing the reviews, keeping out for them coming thick and fast in the next coming few weeks. I'd like to thank everyone that stuck with me so far, and for those that did send messages of support and encouragement while I was on the hiatus, I very much appreciate it. Here's hoping cinema just never leaves us again, because 2021 was a stacked year for movies, and this year it's only going to get better. If you enjoy this ranking, let me know what your favourite movies were of the year 2021 down in the comments below. Drop a like on the video and subscribe for more video content like this coming all the time. Until next time, everybody, stay safe, be good to each other. This is your movie apprentice, Josh, and I'll see you all in the next video.